So yet again, another video about biolabs and bats. It's important. I don't know if it'll ever reach anybody that is a decision maker in the medical processing in our medical healthcare system here in the West, but it is important that they understand what I know. I've been doing research on this since December 9th, 2019. I've learned some things about how the COVID-19 emergency pandemic, global health crisis, attacked by a bioweapon that's killing a lot of humanity, the poisoning of humanity by the CCP. I've learned a lot about how that came about. I don't care much about the personalities involved. If they survive and the rest of us survive, we can deal with them later. I've come to some conclusions about what's going on in China based on some recent information. But today, at this point, the thing to do is to discuss what we know about, or what I suspect about COVID-19 and why it's important to the medical guys. Okay, there's a link below in the description that goes to a doctor in New York who's reporting his observations, his actual observations, not the observations that have been filtered into him by way of the protocols that he's supposed to use. And he reports that this is not pneumonia, that this disease, this bioweapon induces, but another state entirely, and he's not prepared to cope with it. It's a very distressing video to look at if you're in an emotional frame of mind. Be advised. Now, the reason that that's important, it is yet more confirmation. Okay, this guy in New York is saying exactly the same thing that the allopathic doctors in Wuhan said when they first encountered COVID-19 bioweapon and its effect on humans. They were puzzled. There was all kinds of symptoms that did not fit any kind of influenza, did not fit any kind of flu in any way, shape, or form, and were all of the symptoms, not all of the symptoms, were able to be understood relative to the flu. Some of them made no sense at all, especially the way in which the patients were dying. And it turns out to be relatively understandable as we go into the biolab story. I'm going to just step through this. You're quite free to dispute it, not believe it, not accept it, disregard it, whatever you want. I'm not going to try and justify it or throw my chain of evidence out there because I just don't have the time or the interest. If you don't accept it, that's fine. If you're still of the mindset this is a disease or that there is no virus or that this is some kind of weird-ass deep state takedown, that's fine. You'll die. I don't care. Okay, those people that do understand what I'm saying may have a chance at surviving this. This is a bioweapon. There were 2 biolabs in Wuhan. Both of these biolabs were engaged in illegal bioweapon engineering. Both of these biolabs were investigating horseshoe bats, many subspecies of horseshoe bats. Both of these biolabs were investigating the horseshoe bats relative to the same question. They were trying to answer the question of how do horseshoe bats manage to survive and thrive carrying such a huge load of toxic viruses and bacteria. Rabies, COVID, whatever, right? All of these different viruses exist on, in, and part of these bats. How do they survive? This is especially puzzling to the Chinese and all the other normie academics because bats were thought to not make vitamin C. Thus, they had, since vitamin C is an integral part of all fur-bearing animals' immunity, para-immunity, a vital part of their immune system, and they make vitamin C in quantity in the follicular bases of the invisible or of the clear hairs in their fur, excepting humans and some other major primates. We don't make vitamin C. It's not part of our immune system that way. We're driven because it's not part of our immune system, to seek it out with various specific receptors in our bodies, and so we always try and find vitamin C producing plants or animals that we can consume in the local environment because we need it as much as any other animal in our immune system, but we don't make it. Fur-bearing animals make their own. not bats apparently. Everybody thought bats were like humans and didn't make vitamin C. Everybody was wrong. Academia was wrong, 100% fucking wrong. Okay, they don't make vitamin C as we understand it in fur-bearing animals. They make vitamin C in a different method, which is point of use. Fur-bearing animals can be thought of as hot water tanks full of vitamin C. They make vitamin C until their body is saturated and their parammunity is pumped up. And bats don't do this. You can assay the bat flesh and you just don't find vitamin C anywhere. In fact, it is a huge absence of vitamin C that was one of the key things that both of these biolabs were concentrating on. One of the biolabs had a fortunate or unfortunate encounter with some bat shit, some bat droppings that gave them some of their first clues as to what they called the particle. The particle is what we call COVID-19. This particle was a virus particle, and what they were doing was they were assaying bat shit for viral loads. And they found that from healthy bats, viral loads were essentially minimal within the bat droppings. But from unhealthy bats and bats soon to die, the viral load was massive in the bat droppings, and they wanted to know why. And they started investigating it, and they found out that in the healthy bats were excreting a type of vitamin C along with the rest of the stuff from their digestion. Okay, and so the Lab 1 said, aha, they actually must somehow produce vitamin C because it's ending up in their shit. Okay, even though we can't find it in their bodies, even though we can't see them making it, it must be there because it's coming out in their shit and we can assay it in there. And in healthy bats, you have lots of vitamin C in the shit, and in unhealthy bats, you do not. And this is like fresh, okay, because vitamin C does not persist. All right, so any kind of dried bat droppings, it's basically the same. There's just not enough vitamin C in either of them to be able to tell. But because they were obviously cultivating and growing and living with these bats, they were able to deal with fresh bat shit, etc. And so they had some clues there. And so they assayed the dying bats shit, and they came up with a number of particles that they thought may be participating in the death of the bat. And so they also did some intense analysis, and they found out that the dying bats and the healthy bats both had massive amounts of this particular bacteria, Prevotella bacillus. This Prevotella bacillus is known in humans to cooperate with regular flu viruses, regular coronavirus. It's known to allow those viruses to infest humans through its biofilm within the gut. Prevotella B is a studied bacteria. We know about it. Prevotella B has an interesting aspect. It is anaerobic. That is to say, it does not use oxygen to form its vital processes that keep it going. Another thing about it is that it burns sugar in the absence of oxygen. That is to say, it's not doing oxygen combining with the burning of sugar. But also something else about Prevotella is that it puts a massive, what do they call that? Reduced oxygen waste, or it puts a big load on the mitochondria, and they end up producing lots of oxygen in those cells that are affected by the Prevotella B bacillus in the gut. And so for a while, humans actually thought Prevotella B was a major component in the formation of gut cancers. Anyway, though, so back to our biolabs. The biolabs in Wuhan were studying the bats, the horseshoe bats, many different species. They discovered that the healthy bats were producing vitamin C. They didn't know how. And so they end up doing lots and lots of research, and they discover how these bats are producing vitamin C. And it's not like dogs and cats that fill up their hot water tank, so to speak, with their body with vitamin C. It's a point of use system, okay? So the bats make vitamin C at the point that they're actually being attacked by the virus. The vitamin C then engages in the process of the destruction of the virus through electron donation, which essentially destroys the lipid layer, and that it also simultaneously destroys that particular molecular instance of vitamin C. So that vitamin C is no longer assayable in the body of the bat, and that's why we thought that they did not produce vitamin C at all. And in fact, what they have is a superior way of producing vitamin C to animals like dogs and cats and other fur-bearing vertebrates. because they don't need to go out in the sunshine, use that resource to produce the vitamin C in order to fill up their tank, so to speak. The process that a dog or a cat or a giraffe produces vitamin C in their fur is a multi-stage one in which the energy is loaded up from the sun and the vitamin C is then produced in the subsequent hours. The bats don't have time for that. The bats live under such a huge viral load that is intensely inimical to life that they must constantly be defending against this virus load. So they produce vitamin C pretty much continuously as needed without the benefit of sunlight. So their approach to this is entirely unique, and it's a point of use system. This gets into why COVID is so nasty to us. Okay, the bats trained what the Chinese called the particle to continuously sample the bat for its levels of vitamin C. Let me rephrase that. The Chinese discovered in their biolabs that the horseshoe bats trained COVID-19 to continually assay the cells around it for the levels of vitamin C being produced or available continuously. That's how it interacts with the bat. It hosts itself intermediately within the Prevotella bacillus. This is key later on. But its method of attacking the bat cells when the bat gets weak, and it also trains the bat to harden up and make its vitamin C production really good, but the bacillus and the bat are in this constant testing phase. The virus. The virus is testing the bat flesh continuously for levels of vitamin C being produced. Once they fall below a certain level, the virus swarms and that's it for the bat. And it's very rapid. Even in those bats that have existed with massive amounts of this virus for the entire length of their life, they can succumb to it extremely rapidly if their ability to generate vitamin C in their point of use system is even delayed. Okay, so the Chinese in one of their experiments did something that caused these bats to have a delay in the ability of that system to kick in. They were messing about with signaling molecules, I think. But in any event, they report that when the bat's ability to kick in the point of use creation of vitamin C was even delayed by half a minute or more, the bats became overwhelmed with the virus that we call COVID-19, or that they originally identified as one of many particles that they found within the bat droppings that might have been their goal, which was the bioweapon. Now, both of these biolabs cooperated. Both of them each had aspects of the weapon under development. It is true that there is evidence that Western elites and Western biolabs participated in this entire process, and we can eventually get around to destroying those where they are in the United States and Canada and hunting down the people in the corporations in London that put all this together. And these individuals will be made to, eat some COVID, and we'll sit there and watch them croak on it or something. I don't know. They are truly evil. They're short-sighted. They're incredibly fucking evil just through short-sightedness if there's no other aspect of their personality driving them. So let me pick up again. Our bats trained the virus to continually sample for levels of vitamin C. That is why we're getting all of these effects on the individuals. Okay, now let me go back to our doctor in New York, whose video is below, whose link to the video is below. This doctor reports symptoms in words that are almost identical to what was coming out of Wuhan in the early days. All right, in Wuhan, they ran into the same strange things where their patients were basically not drowning in a cytokine storm, not drowning from or not suffocating from pneumonia, although they probably, through the use of misdiagnosis as pneumonia and the use of ventilators, as this doctor suggests, may have induced the fibrosis, may have induced a lot of the problems in their patients, just because they were unaware they were dealing with a bioweapon and thought it was a flu. And in a flu, you might get pneumonia, and therefore you take anti-pneumonia approaches. Here, that was not appropriate because they were forcing, through the pressurization of the lungs with the ventilators, they were forcing the combined COVID-19 and Prevotella bacillus into the blood. And that's when the blood would go anaerobic, like the Prevotella bacillus, okay? This anaerobic nature meant that the oxygen was being consumed in a way that was not benefiting the red blood cells. It was not being allowed to attach to the red blood cells and then go through the oxygen carbon dioxide exchange. Instead, that process was being interrupted at a way that the doctors did not understand and cannot understand as long as they think of this as a disease. Once they start thinking of it as a bioweapon, then they will understand those things that are going on, and they will make certain, then we will be able to start making different choices and do things in a different manner that will yield different results, and people will, and then we'll get on top of it, basically. Now, here's the thing. Initially, reports were that, now we know why, by the way, people that tended relatives in Wuhan, these people who were vitamin C aficionados, fanatics, and took vitamin C every day because China is a virus-filled place anyway, these individuals suffered no COVID-19 while they were tending relatives in ICU. Yet the doctors around them in PPE equipment, and these people just had simple masks, okay? They didn't have any of the suits or any of that other stuff. And they were tending their relatives 3 and 4 hours a day for months in ICU in Wuhan. And ultimately into regular wards as their relatives were discharged, because they were. Okay, this was repeated more than once. These individuals did not get COVID. The doctors in the PPE, the doctors and nurses died. A lot of them died. A lot of them died. One traveling group of doctors that came from somewhere near Hong Kong lost half of the staff that showed up to treat in Wuhan. They lost half of their staff to this. Now, the progression of it in Wuhan led the Communist Chinese Party to adopt certain treatments, protocols, and regimens. We know a lot of these failed. We know that the Chinese Communist Party, at least some chunk of it, some aspect of it, was not informed as to what they were facing. This led to a lot of the Chinese Communist Party members who were afflicted with COVID in the early days, that is to say through January and into February, getting double lung transplants, because those doctors thought that the lungs were failing due to this massive corrosion or eating away of the lung tissue, that they were probably inducing some of it with the ventilators. Nonetheless, the lungs were terribly trashed. But what they did not understand at that time was that it would not matter if these guys had brand new lungs, because the problem is not in the lungs, it's in the blood. The blood becomes unable to process oxygen and carbon dioxide, and you suffocate, even though you've got adequate ability to move your lungs, adequate ability to move air in and out of your lungs. It's just simply not working. Okay, so now there was a lot of things. Let me divert back to vitamin C. In the early days in Wuhan, there were a lot of reports from the guys doing autopsies that in cases of multiple organ failure, the patients had the appearance of scurvy in multiple organs, localized scurvy in the endothelial layer, localized scurvy in veins, arteries, liver, localized scurvy in on the outside of intestinal tissue. That is to say, not the inside, but the outside, within the body, but not the internal. And localized scurvy on multiple organs. And yet these individuals did not appear to have scurvy. But this was reported repeatedly in these autopsies. And so scurvy is a disease that is entirely related to vitamin C levels. Now, this is similar to how the bats look when they die from failure of their point of use instant on-demand vitamin C system, is that they get multiple organ failure as the virus overwhelms them, and they end up with scurvy. But they rarely show scurvy signs on their external body parts, wings, anything. But they will show scurvy on the soft tissues of the eyes, the tongue, and the mucous membranes, okay? And so basically what happens is that this virus that has been trained to continuously sample the host for its levels of vitamin C overwhelms the bats and attacks and is repelled by what vitamin C exists there, and then it uses up that vitamin C, and there's no replenishment, and it overwhelms the tissues, and leaving behind a scurvy-like condition. And that's how it progresses. Another thing that they note is that in the bats that die of it, that literally just fall off the perch and drop down dead of it when it gets to a certain point in their body, they are in a gasping state where they cannot suck in air. So humans are dying exactly as the horseshoe bats do from this same nascent bioweapon. So now here's the thing. Obviously, if this virus, let's just call it that, or particle, if this virus is continually sampling for vitamin C, then that is the key. As long as it finds a certain level of vitamin C in the tissue, the virus does not initiate a full-on growth process. It seems to stay relatively constrained within the Prevotella bacillus, at least insofar as the bats are concerned. We don't know for sure that that's the way it would be in humans. If we had a continual vitamin C load, would the virus just basically stay content to stay in the Prevotella bacillus, and then we could eliminate the Prevotella from us? I don't know. See, we're going to have to figure out treatment modalities that work within the human body. I'm just reporting what I've been able to ascertain from the biolabs, their investigation of batshit, their investigation of the particle, their investigation of vitamin C, and then so the subsequent is, if you look at my previous videos going back well over 2 months, you'll see that I kept hammering on vitamin C, and I've repeatedly stated that the Chinese Communist Party reacted as though vitamin C was the key to this bioweapon, in that they were trying to get as much L-ascorbic to their Navy, and that forms something we'll get into in a second, but they tried to get as much L-ascorbic to their Navy as could possibly be delivered, and then the whole bases were sealed up. So they knew that the bases would be under an assault. They knew that they wanted to keep the people in there, and that they knew that they needed to keep them really dosed with vitamin C. Okay, and here's the thing. There's other vitamins involved in this. There's vitamin D, there's vitamin A, there's other compounds in this. So now, if you look at my previous videos to all the medicos, you'll see that I discovered, due to a happenstance connection to a traditional Chinese herbalist, not a traditional Chinese doctor, but an herbalist, that is to say a pharmacologist, somebody who was into phytotherapy, right, who procured plants for the Chinese medical industry. I happen to have a relationship with him. We went back a number of years. I explained this in previous videos. He lived in Wuhan, near it, and he worked in Wuhan during all of this. I have had no contact with him since that last contact in January. But during that period of time, he gave me a clue that chaga mushroom that he had been giving to his patients, that he obtained in trade with people in Siberia, was apparently keeping his patients healthy and not affected by whatever the fuck it was that was going through Wuhan like a scythe through wheat. Okay, and so you can go back and look at the details that I've explained, but basically the reason that chaga works is that it's massively loaded with vitamin C, vitamin D, and vitamin A, melanin, and some levels of melatonin. Okay, so chaga also has a very unique capability. This is why it's so key at the moment. This is why it's better than elderberry. This is why it's better than Usnea, which also is another plant that's hugely loaded with vitamin C and has shown some effect in this, okay? But chaga has a unique ability that science knows exists, has done double-blind tests all to hell and gone. Chaga is the most studied medicinal mushroom on this planet, most tested, rigorously examined, but they don't know why it does it, but it does modulate the immune system. It is an immunoregulator, an immunomodulator. And there's many different hypotheses as to how this happens, what it does, and so on, but nobody's really nailed it. But we do know that it's massively loaded relative to size with vitamin C in a particular form that is hugely bioavailable. When you take chaga, you get almost all of the vitamin C out of it. The same thing as vitamin D and vitamin A. You also get triterpenes, polypeptides, polysaccharides, and any number of beta glucans and beta lutinic acids and all these other things, okay? The combination of them all act as an immunoregulator. So you don't get cytokine storms when you have chaga. Your body does not react that way. Chaga, in fact, appears to, in a sense, act as a coordinating vitamin C sergeant or commander, okay? And chaga appears to aid the focus of the body on the areas where the virus is and not respond to a generalized immunostorming through misapplied cytokines, okay? So there's all these various different immune systems, one of which is the adaptogenic, where you produce antibodies, but there's others that come into play before that. This is where chaga works, okay? Chaga does not give a shit about antibodies. Chaga is more like the para-immunity regulator that the dogs and the cats have in them, or that the bats have in them, that produces the vitamin C on demand. And so this is why chaga appears to have a higher level of effectiveness than other herbals and medicinals in this battle with COVID. I personally have had individuals in the West who in the early days in January were still able to send chaga to their relatives in China. And we at that point did not know the efficacy of vitamin C. I was just recommending the chaga. And as far as I know, these people are only taking chaga alone. And they are well, unaffected by this, did not get ill when people all around them were dying. And these individuals were in some of the key demographics to really suffer a bad state, in that they were old farts like me, or older, right, in retirement villages and so on. And so chaga kept them going. The last I heard, we had no deaths in any of the small study group that was taking chaga, which is probably about 30 individuals, 11 of which were in Wuhan, and the rest scattered around China. We've had no instances of COVID affecting this community. Another unique community was this group of bodybuilders in Singapore that had the habit of supplementing large amounts of vitamin C taken with collagen, in the understanding that the two taken together cause the collagen to work better, to make their skin look better, their hair healthier, their bones stronger, etc., right? And so they would take the vitamin C as an adjunct to taking the collagen, and necessarily were taking 10 and 12 grams of vitamin C a day in the form of either ascorbic acid or L-ascorbate. And they were doing it pretty much continuously through the day as they attempted to chug down all the collagen, which was just part of their regimen. None of these individuals had been ill. In this one small cadre, there's 26 individuals, various ages. None have reported even sniffles. Some of these people were actually, prior to the lockdown and the quarantine in the area, volunteering at healthcare institutions, what we would think of as an urgent care street facility, because they knew their communities were at risk. So this does work. We've had anecdotal, or you might say small, uncontrolled studies relative to this. Now we understand, or at least I understand, why some of this is occurring. Okay, it has to do with the nature of the bioweapon that was let loose on us by the unthinking activity of the Chinese Communist Party, their lax safety standards, or there's a war going on within the CCP right at this moment. Okay, so there's some suggestion, and this is just a diversion, there's some suggestion that Xi Jinping is on his way out, and that this is all an engineered process that got out of hand, whereby one part of the Chinese Communist Party wanted to remove the existing power structure. And this one part of the Communist Party arranged to have this virus let loose at a particular time in late October in 2019 in Wuhan during the military games. And they let it loose at that time in order not to infect the world. I'm assuming that there's probably layers upon layers upon layers of agenda, but I'm assuming that their point was the destruction of Xi Jinping's power base by the isolation of Xi Jinping away from the military, because the military would be devastated by this. There would have to be a SARS-like response, which was brutal when they did that, and that would be they thought, in my opinion, the final wedge to push Xi Jinping and his power structure out of power so that they could move in, and that they were going to come on in and capitalize and take over. The reason that I suggest this is that there was an early battle in January over control of vitamin C production in China. And it appears as though Xi Jinping actually ended up using the military to co-opt some L-ascorbate factories to produce for the People's Liberation Army Navy. Okay, but there was another group that was resisting that and had set up vitamin C factories in outlying areas of China that were still under their control, and they did not fund or fuel the vitamin C trains going into these Navy bases. And so I think that there's some evidence we can take that there's a war going on within the CCP at this moment, and we're starting to see the outbreak into the public of this hidden war that's been going on around the COVID-19. So now the COVID-19 interacts with Prevotella B bacillus. Prevotella bacillus is anaerobic. We don't get it in our lungs or in our blood. We get it in our lungs occasionally. We get it in our gut frequently, in our gut biome. It's not good that we have that. Okay, Prevotella B is more than a minor irritant. It's a cause of some disease. It's frequently treated in various different medical regimens to get you healthy from it. Okay, but one thing we do know about it is that you don't get it in your blood. And apparently this is what is going on, is that we are getting the combination of these two elements, the COVID-19 and the Prevotella B, produce something that we can put a name on it or not. I don't care. But it is what's causing our blood to go anaerobic and causing these people to basically exhaust out of oxygen because the oxygen exchange doesn't work anymore. Now, what the Chinese doctors discovered in Wuhan when they first started dealing with this in December was that some individuals could be put on, especially if they were young, they could be put on these machines, and I can't remember the name of them, the Chinese name. They could be put on these machines that would oxygenate your blood outside your body, and it would work. The people would recover their senses. They would start becoming sensate again. You would think that they're on their way to recovery, but the minute they stopped doing that, boom, they went back into this death state, literally walking into dying. The Chinese have a weird-ass medical system. The weird-ass medical system requires payment as you go. And so the people that were put on these extraordinary measures of the oxygenating the blood outside the body were running up very high bills, and a lot of them were cut off because those bills weren't paid by the families. And so we have a lot of families during that period of time very angry that their relatives die within minutes to an hour of these machines being shut off, and because they can't pay. And so these families put out their grief and their anger onto the deep web, and that's where I kept encountering all of these. So I would see these people as basically, they weren't whistleblowers. They were just venting their anger in the only safe place they knew, which was on the deep web, where it was very difficult to connect an individual Chinese fellow to a posting out there. So that's where we're at. I'm going to put the link to the doctor's reaction below. You can see he is describing encountering a bioweapon without being told it's a bioweapon. Okay, and so this is my real concern at the moment. We are being attacked by a bioweapon. Our medical people and our military do not understand it as a bioweapon. They are not reacting to it as a bioweapon, and they're subsequently suffering and dying. Our medical system as a whole is suffering and dying and collapsing because they don't recognize it as a bioweapon. And because if they do recognize that it is a bioweapon, if they change their mind that it is a bioweapon, and that this is what's going on, then they will find different ways to do things, and instantly the picture will change because the things they will find will start to become more effective, and they'll concentrate on these things. If you note, there's 3 hospitals, I'm told, in New York that are using high-dose vitamin C to treat this. Okay, instantly when the people come on in, they start deciding they're going to get jabbed with vitamin C. All right, they are having a significant impact on mortality by so doing. All right, now we know why. Because this COVID-19 continually tests the body for its level of active, available vitamin C, because that's what keeps the COVID-19 virus in the bats under control, is that the bats produce vitamin C on demand anytime the COVID-19 virus sticks its head out. This explains so much. This concept, this understanding of COVID-19 in its relationship with vitamin C within the bats forms a holistic understanding that provides many avenues for opportunistic defeating of this bioweapon. It has many holes in it, okay? Obviously, the bats live with it quite harmoniously. And so thus we know it can be defeated. It can be dealt with. The bats are not in a position to flip a switch and take an extra pill to totally knock it out of their body, to get rid of it by massive vitamin C infusion, overwhelming vitamin C infusion, that sort of thing, right? But we can take different approaches to this and make different decisions that will produce a different outcome other than the one we currently are marching headlong on, which is the total degradation of society, the complete lack of a healthcare system that can be described as sophisticated, and the deaths of tens and tens and tens of millions of people, hundreds of millions, maybe a billion, simply to sepsis, disease, lack of medicines, lack of electricity, and failing infrastructure, okay? And so that's really the path we're walking on. That's the path all of these stupid fucking doctors are walking on because they're academics. And I'm sorry, I shouldn't criticize them. They're trained that way. They cannot help but think that way. And so I don't think that way. I don't respect their way of thinking because I don't think it is realistic, but I shouldn't denigrate it. It's as realistic, it's as valuable in the planet as mine, all right? Obviously far more valuable than mine because we've got a huge amount of resource invested in doctors and healthcare and stuff, and not very much invested in my way of thinking. But nonetheless, I'm right in this particular instance, and I could do things that others can't do simply because I can see things others cannot. And I'm here telling you, I see these things. If you want to examine what I've seen, if you're a medical professional, if you're a healthcare administrator, if you are a decision maker within the CNC structure, within a military base, or within the military at any level, then you guys can find me, all right? I'm easily found. Send me an email. I will send you back a phone number, or we can make connections on Skype. I will answer any and all questions that you might want. All right, anything you want. I'm not trying to hide anything here. I'm not trying to sell any of this information. I don't monetize these fucking videos. I've been kicked off of Twitter. I was kicked off by the Chinese, by the way, and they did it in a very slick way. The Chinese took an old phone number of mine, 4 fucking phone numbers back, 4 phones back. I had a particular number on a carrier I no longer have that has not been an authentication number for me for at least 5 years, if not 7. And yet that phone number is now my contact phone number on my Twitter account. So anytime I try and do anything, it wants to send a double authentication to that phone number that I don't even have anymore, right? And so I can't get that code. And Twitter's interface is so lame, there's no way around it. It's their security system, I understand that. And it's the final barrier, so to speak, to cracking. But someone inside Twitter changed my phone number and then posted a bunch of stuff in a spam-like fashion from my account, which caused an algorithm to trigger such that every time I log in, it wants to validate that I'm who I am. Only I can't because I can't get access through to that phone because that's not the phone number that I had on Twitter most recently as my new phone number, which I put it would have been February of 2018. So I basically, it was very sophisticated. Twitter doesn't know I've been cracked. They don't know that they've been infiltrated and that my account's been shut down. But obviously I irritated the CCP. There have been a number of other attacks on me by the CCP. So I know that my message is getting out and that at least the CCP is paying attention to it. Communist Party of China, big evil fuckers that started all this horror. So I know they know what's going on and they don't want this information to come on out. I don't think that they can take too much action against me without raising my profile and causing themselves further blowback, and they're somewhat sophisticated now and they know not to do that here in the West. They're aware that we have a nascent kind of a martyr situation here where internet martyrs do well, so to speak, at least in terms of their messages. So I'll get off. It's been basically an encapsulation of where we're at. Doctors, this is why, by the way, I got kicked off of Twitter, was because I had made this statement to a couple of doctors that basically said, as long as you guys treat this as a disease, you will keep dying. And they thought I was being mean and that kind of thing. I was just being factual. I'm trying to scare the crap out of them so that they'll pop out of their protocol and look at what other information is available, that they're not fighting a disease as they understand it. Anyway, so I get frustrated and I keep doing these videos. I don't know how much longer I'll keep doing them. The lack of positive feedback has a tendency to wear down even on my intent to get the information out. And obviously, if I've done 20 of them and the information doesn't get out, I'm going down the wrong path. So I need to do something else at that stage. And so I'm getting close to trying to think about something else to get this information out, that this is the approach. All right, and this explains so much. This explains why the vitamin C was taken by the Communist Party of China and shoved in all these military bases. It explains why the people I know taking chaga didn't get ill, why the people I know that are taking vitamin C, even here in this country, acting in healthcare situations. We have a number of nurses and doctors who have paid attention, who are taking chaga and vitamin C daily in what the allopaths, the academics, would consider to be massive loads. I'm currently taking over 10 grams a day, and I feel great, and I'm taking 4 different kinds just to see how they work, so I can report on a personal level that, sea salts versus L-ascorbate versus ascorbic acid versus liposomal C versus usnea versus all these different kinds of plants. And so, I'm thinking long term. Like, what if the rest of you fuckers don't get your shit together and you all end up dying from this fucking bioweapon, and I'm left with a small group of people, planet-wide, failing infrastructure, and we got to pull our shit together and keep going. How are we going to do this, knowing that there's this COVID-19 bioweapon out there? I found plants even here in the Northwest, even in the Northern Hemisphere, that I can rely on the rest of my life to provide adequate levels of vitamin C should the whole infrastructure fall apart. It's not going to be good. We've still got a chance to change this. It's just a matter of opening your mind and deciding it's not a disease. It's a bioweapon.